Welcome to the Upshift podcast, where changemakers meet and commune and find out how each other is doing their part in changing the world. Hey, today my guest is Layton Fulton, who is a hypnotherapist and director at a hypnotherapy clinic up in Canada. And he just said it was beautiful up there, which I'm experiencing 90-degree weather. I can imagine it's better up there. But hey, to my male podcast listeners, listen up. This is for you. Women, you also, but for men, I really want you guys to turn the dial up and listen to this guy. All right, Layton, welcome.
Thanks. That's a great intro. That's big shoes to fill there.
Well, no, you fill them. So your story is amazing and it's got so many caveats. Give me a quick, like if we were to throw the rock over the river, and it skip. Give me the top highlights on what got you to be here as a hypnotherapist, because you certainly didn't start out there.
No. I had an amazing life. I will say this again, I'll start off with, and I've said it when we spoke before, that, all the bumps, all the scrapes, and all the highlight reel points that we have in our life are all the things that make us this amazing individual that we are today. And I was fortunate enough to have an amazing life that started off on a farm, small farm town. Grew up on the family farm with my grandparents living, right across the irrigation ditch on the other side of the property. I had a lot of amazing mentors starting there in my life. And after working on the farm, I got into the trades early into construction when I was young. My father was a tradesman as well as working on the farm with my grandfather. And I got into welding and construction. I got my journeyman certificate. Between the ages of 13 and 24, I was very involved in working in a shop, working in the oil field, building drilling rigs, working in pipeline construction. And then I started working all over the country, the western side of Canada, up in the Northwest Territories. There's multiple provinces up here, working over a really vast area, working in the mountains and the prairies, out on the coastline, and working construction. Again, working through at my level of welding, having apprentices, being a mentor, being a supervisor, being a foreman, and eventually ended up in management, whether it was in downtown Calgary, where we do all our meetings, or in various shops and field projects all over Western Canada, which is awesome. But then I found myself, I have two amazing kids. I had gone through, unfortunately, I'm no longer married. But when my kids left, when you're no longer running kids around, doing things, picking kids up from dance and helping your son get his car running so he can make it to work, helping him figure the bus schedule out when that doesn't work, and all those types, being a dad, being a mentor again. When you're not doing that stuff, I moved back to my roots, back to the farm town that I grew up in, and had a great management job at a wonderful company. But, found myself throwing my legs over the edge of the bed one morning and just like, here I am. I've got this amazing job. I've led this amazing life. There's some bumps and scrapes that I'm sure we'll get into and discuss that led us to here. But I found myself just, I'm 50 years old. I'm supposed to be coasting. This is the part where we're supposed to be, we just show up and do everything all day. And for some reason that didn't sit good with me. I'm just like, no, I wasn't happy with that. There was this itch, this scratch, this knowing that there's more to something than showing up and paying your bills and doing things. And at that time, I didn't know what that was. So I started exploring, and now I'm talking to you on podcasts and living an amazing life, checking stuff out.
So, all right. So when I listen to you about your journey here, it sounds very masculine. It sounds masculine, managing males, doing masculine things. It sounds like a very, very, very heavy, manly world. And, you started out on a farm, and yet now, I mean, there's a leap there, but I think it must have been just a step for you. You're a feeling person. You're a man, and you told me you're supposed to be coasting at 50. It's like, according to whom, referencing what, But who says men have to be all tough and just deal with it, tough it through, right? About everything, like, don't show your emotions. I'm sure you didn't have a lot of guys cry, on the pipelines. No, but yet men are human. Men are human. There's no difference between our emotions. The difference is how we express them and the things that happen when you don't. We'll get into that. But how did you I get there's an itch, but how did you make that? You had to take off a lot of armor, a lot of male masking. So tell us about that journey to get you to where you are today because you're a feeling guy. You have nothing to hide. Are just totally wide open. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah, great. Let's get into that. I'm going to reference this a lot as we've spoke before. I was fortunate enough throughout my entire life, and I'll speak to some of them, to have great mentors. When you're in it and you have an amazing mentor and somebody's saying, "Hey, you know, when this comes up, you have to be confident," and yeah, people that hold you accountable throughout your life, you might not realize right then and there as to what's happening. You're just like, "This is my boss. This is the guy." I've been fortunate to have positive male figures and some negative ones that also teach you things. But to get to your point to where how I ended up here from being in that world again with the kids gone, I started revisiting my hobbies and getting back into the things that you used to do before you have kids or when your kids are things and things that were fun. And a lot of those things were getting myself back on track in fitness, my nutrition, reading was a big thing, and I noticed when I was getting into my reading, my flavors of what I enjoyed had vastly changed. I used to read a lot of rock star autobiographies and bubblegum for your brain, which is a great story, but it's the same story over and over. The rise, the fall, and then the rebirth,
Yeah.
which is funny, fairly fitting. So I used to always like, Alan Watts. We used to listen to Paul Harvey on the farm all the time at coffee time. And when I was work, again, great storytellers and people that could really, really get you thinking. So when I started visiting that again, I got back into my fitness regime, I always liked yoga, which was, used to do a lot of manual labor. So yoga and stretching was a part of just maintaining my physical health. So getting back into that, with that comes a lot of mindfulness. I did when I moved into the office. I actually got on adult ADHD medication that is, it's not very healthy for you, but I didn't like that. I didn't like it. I've never been a pharmaceutical type guy. So in coming with that, I'm like, okay, this is not how I'm proceeding. So what do I do to get off of this? That came mindful practice. Again, more reading down the rabbit hole of dopamine and so on and so forth.
Yep.
And you're asking how it got to this point, and it was with all of that comes some uncomfortable conversations with yourself about, why am I uncomfortable? Honestly, sitting with myself, how is it that what am I uncomfortable about? And what is it that why don't I want to do this? And coming to the realization that a lot of the things that were going on and the uncomfortability in my life, whether you disliked this guy at work or you disliked how that guy was handling or how this owner was talking to you and so on and so forth, you have to come to the realization that it's nothing to do with those individuals. Those individuals are just being themselves. I was allowing them to, affect how I was going throughout my day. And that was a big realization. And I know this is very basic concepts, but again, back to the world that I was working in, to have that uncomfortable conversation with yourself and to sit in it and have that realization and not just push it off and be like, man, yeah, you spoke very clearly about the put it in a jar and we just tamp that down and deal with that later. So to intentionally bring forward uncomfortable conversations, and in the workplace and with myself is kind of where it got me to sit and be mindful and be like, what is this? And then it led me down a road of reading and exploring that, there's a lot more to it.
Hmm. So how did well, okay, I had 2 questions. One is tell me the blocks. I wanna know the emotional blocks. What do you run into? Well, we haven't really gone into what you do now. Hypnotherapy. You still haven't told me there was some point where it's like, I'm gonna become a hypnotherapist. What was that moment? Then as you became one and you started working with men, I know you work with women too, but I wanna really focus on your work with men. I wanna discuss the blocks and how you've been able to get through them. But first of all, how did you become a hypnotherapist?
I was reading a lot, again, to reference back to Alan Watts, Aldous Huxley, Thomas Campbell, David Hawkins, Rupert Sheldrake. These are all authors that I love and was reading a lot of their work. And that comes into human consciousness where I was just enthralled by all this information, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And my partner, the woman that I'm dating right now, her and I had started dating about 3.5 years ago. And we were discussing all these books and all these concepts and things. And she came across the individual who actually owns the clinic that has been up and running for, I think, 11 years now. He was reaching out in the city that she lives in and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about maybe teaching a hypnotherapy class." He'd been doing it, consecutively a few years, and said, "I was thinking about growing the practice and doing." And she came across it, and it was just really in line with what we were talking about. And we said, "Hey, you know what? This can be not only an individual personal development, but it's something fun that we can do together and grow together. And what the heck? Let's just do it." It was kind of we were not really sure what it's about, but it sounds amazing. It's in line with, kind of where we are. As I was doing it, I realized that it was put in front of me for a reason. If we want to talk about intervention or what it is, it was in front of me, and we really got along with the fellow that runs the clinic. We're close with him, and it just really resonated with me. And the more I did it, the more I realized that this wasn't so much a lot of learning. It was just me constantly having these moments of, I know that
Yeah.
this makes perfect sense. I know this, but thinking constantly. I've been through lots of management courses, whether it was Dale Carnegie or all these, these management forward thinking, team building environments when I was in the management world. And I'd listen to the individual talk and be like, "Oh yeah, but who doesn't know that? Of course we're doing that. Of course we're doing this." And when I was doing this course, I was having those moments, but I was thinking, of course I know this, but am I acknowledging it when I'm doing it? Am I consciously doing it with intention, or am I doing it? So it was some really good check boxes for myself to be like, I'm going to check in that I'm actually doing and not acknowledging that I'm doing it, but do it with some intention. And I really found that going through this course and doing the training, I was just absolutely energized and back to who I felt like I used to be before I kind of got into this structured Groundhog Day of get up, go to work, do the things. And it ignited this curiosity in me. And so here we are today.
So describe your typical client now on the guy side. Who's because we talked before and you're saying that these big burly manly guys are in your office. And so tell me the demographic. Give me your
Yeah, and I would use air quotes if I didn't want to have my hands up in the screen here, but they're just real people. They're your average blue collar type dude. Is that a lot of the people that I used to work with, they're just common individuals, I guess, whether they grew up working or whether they didn't grow up working without a positive mentors, and then multiple individuals will follow into the construction trades because there is that structure. There are positive role models. There are good mentors. There are people that will give you direction and hold you accountable. And I mean, who doesn't want that when you're not sure what to do? Who doesn't want somebody to step in and say, "I got you. I got your back. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how to do it." And when you screw up, I'm going to come over and be like, "Why did we do this? Did I fail you? Or were you just not listening?"
Mhm.
So a lot of people thrive in that environment when they didn't have it. And people also can really thrive in that when they grew up with that. And they're like, "Hey, I need some more of this so that I can learn how to get to that next step. I can learn how to be a better version of me or be a version of this individual that I'm working with."
Mhm.
So they're people that don't really know if you don't know what to do with this. We're not taught a lot of how to deal with stuff other than to, just like you'd spoke, power through.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you aren't taught to be introspective. I mean, in my work, people don't even know their body's screaming at them, giving them all kinds of messages. They're like, whatever. And then it becomes chronic. Describe for us describe to a fifth grader, what is hypnotherapy?
Awesome. Yeah. Hypnotherapy is, I'm going to start off with the preface of This is not the type of hypnosis that I'm going to bring somebody up and make them cluck like a chicken or rob a bank. I can't hypnotize anyone. I can't make somebody do anything that they weren't going to do on their own. And it's not about making anybody do anything. What it's about is getting a person's conscious mind, which is, your conscious mind is the that says, "Hey, I think I'm going to wear my denim jacket today because it's kind of cool out and it's not supposed to rain." But man, I don't like how that guy cut me off right now. Man, I want to eat a donut on the way to work, so I'm going to leave 5 minutes early to go through the drive-through. That's just your day-to-day type brain of, I like blue hats, I like red gloves, yada, yada, that type of stuff. Your unconscious mind, which is your reptilian brain, is your nervous system that says how you're going to operate throughout the day. When somebody comes up and talks to you and says, blah, 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 and slams some paperwork down on, how do you react to that? What part are you frightened by that? Are you angered by that? How did you react to that? That is your unconscious mind. And hypnotherapy accesses that unconscious mind that has formed beliefs throughout your life, whether it was through trauma, whether it was through a constant affirmation, whether it was through a poor relationship or an amazing relationship, or just, your brain when you're young up until you're about 7, your brain is wide open. It's impressionable. It's making decisions based on your environment. Those decisions are based on what's going to keep you safe. Your unconscious mind is amazingly powerful. It regulates your decisions, but it just wants to keep you safe. But some of those beliefs can be formed in error.
Mhm,
If
of
when
course.
you're a
Yeah.
kid, when you're 6 or 7, you don't actually know what's going on with your parents, and maybe you think they're fighting, but maybe they're telling a story or they're being emphatic, but you don't know that. So your nervous system, your unconscious mind can form a belief in error, and that might keep you safe, but when you're a 25 or 30-year-old man or woman who's experiencing life, you might still be falling back into some of those habits. So if we can utilize hypnotherapy to get your conscious mind out of the way, access your unconscious mind and say, "Hey, what's really going on here?" And then we can say, this was a belief that kept you safe or has helped you regulate your life up until this point, but it's no longer serving us. So we're going to rewrite that script. And while we have your unconscious mind open again, like it was when you were young, we can say, "Hey, we're going to remove this belief. We're going to install this new one that does suit us, and we're going to move forward like that permanently." And then we can instill that and then bring the individual back out into their conscious life and integrate that so that you can, you know, acknowledge when these repetitive loops are happening and disperse them. Move forward
Yeah.
how you'd like to.
So, give us an example of a before and after, because it sounds like you could go into this traumatic belief system and pluck it out, listen to what you say, pluck it out and say, unplug it, toss it, plug something else in there that says, I am not in danger when this happens, whatever the words are. So give us an example. Like somebody walks in and they're deathly fear of da da da. They did hypnotherapy and now they can handle sitting in a room full of spiders, whatever it is.
Okay.
Tell me.
Yeah, I got a great example. There was a fellow that came in and he was having issues. He had a great job. This is a common tale. He came in, he had a good job. He was a supervisor or a manager at a company, doesn't matters not. But he was responsible for working with the team, and he would have to come in, give a presentation, come into the boardroom, or come into the in the morning into the office and give a presentation or say, "Hey, here's what we're up to. Here's our next quarter." And he was failing in that he was procrastinating and he was doing 90% of the job and he just couldn't pull the 10% together. He came and saw an individual at the clinic because he had this big presentation and he left making the PowerPoint, making the presentation until the night before, ended up having a few too many beers. It was a bomb, came in, it wasn't really done. And he got pulled apart by his manager the next day. And it's like, what is up? Like, you're killing it. You're a great employee. You're doing, but where did this come from? What is this? And it was a repetitive behavior. He realized that this couldn't quite pull that last bit together. So when in hypnotherapy, you confuse that conscious mind, get it out of the way, and you ask them for a scene and say, you ask their unconscious mind for a clear, important scene that is causing this repetitive behavior. And he, for some reason, brought up this. He remembered when he was young and he was building this big Lego set in his toy room. And he must have been in kindergarten or something because he was home when his dad came home, was waiting for dad to come home, had this great big block structure built in his playroom. Couldn't wait for dad to have a look at this. And dad came, walked right past the door, blew right past him when he came in. So then he was walking around, he said he remembers pulling on his hand, and his dad just kept, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And wasn't paying attention. And then he grabbed a bunch of stuff and he left. And he's just like, all right. So went back to his playroom. For whatever reason, he saw this and there was somewhere a core belief in there was that, I am not enough. My work isn't good enough. I don't deserve the time. So we rewrote this and said, well, you've done nothing. It's nothing to do with you.
Right.
What other people's experience shouldn't. So we removed that, released that, and instilled in upon there, everything that I do is enough. I am capable, and so on and so forth. And then brought him back out. There was a couple other things, but we kept instilling this belief that I am enough. What I do is enough. I am lovable. And he took it, the next day. This really struck with him, and he phoned his mom, and he just said, Mom, I was thinking about this thing, and his mom got a little bit choked up, and she's like, you know what? I remember, I remember this because we just moved into a new home. You had this playroom. You thought it was great. You built this thing. And he said, your dad came home. That was the day he got a call at work, and he came home. His mom was deathly ill out of nowhere in the hospital. He came home and grabbed his stuff and was trying to talk to his brother on the phone, grabbed
Yeah.
his stuff and then ran out.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with what this little boy
Right.
had to do. And he's like, oh, well, this is this thing. So it was nothing to do with this son, but this, dad had a lot of other stuff on his mind. He had to get to his mom. He had to get to his brothers. He had to deal with stuff. But this little boy took that as, my stuff doesn't mean anything. There's no
Right.
sense finishing it because nobody wants to see it anyway.
Yeah.
So these are just nobody's fault. No one was at fault in this situation, but that belief stuck with him so hard that it just it doesn't matter if I do it. So
So how's this presentation now? I mean, did it change overnight?
it did change drastically. It's that aha moment that people talk about. Now, when we do the hypnotherapy, we record the session when the person is under, and then we create a custom recording it's the induction that, puts the person into that ooey gooey bit of I guess to preface it a bit, the state that we want individuals in. If you've ever been, I'm sure, running a podcast and businesses, you've been so exhausted before that you've laid down on your pillow and you've thought to yourself, here it comes. I'm falling asleep. I'm so happy for that moment right there. You are so susceptible to suggestion. So we put the person in that state and then hold them there with intention and breathing and intentional verbiage. And when you hold them right there and they're susceptible and open, so we create a recording from that session that is that induction that puts them into that state. And then we reiterate what we spoke about in the session that, you are not other people's experience. You are not your past. This has nothing to do with you, all in proper verbiage, and then wrap it up and say, this is permanently, your new state of vibration. With intention, you will move forward with these new thoughts and beliefs. It's your unconscious mind to control. So this is your belief. We create that recording and individuals listen to it. It's about a 15 to 20-minute recording. Listen to it, put your headphones on or on the speakers when they go to bed every night we ask for 3 weeks. And that continues to support your nervous system moving forward, saying, this is true, this is true, this is true. So yes, it was an aha moment that changed how he looked at things immediately.
That's amazing. You just reminded me that I did hypnotherapy at 18 years old. And part of what I walked away with was needing the relaxation because I was going so fast. And I was even shifting my car and grinding the gears. But after I would have this session, everything was so much smoother. It's wild. I mean, I just had this memory. And yes, I had something almost exactly like that guy with my own father that did leave an imprint that men did not think I was important enough, that my voice wasn't to be heard. And yeah, and that I was not enough. And I literally just started to address that in speaking. It's the same thing, speaking. So doing things that are triggering, doing things that are tough or push people against, I guess, this thing where it's like, am I good enough or not good enough? And then it goes into the limbic brain or where they go and grab these memories and go, "Well, that's right, I'm not." And then it sounds like they've now spent the rest of their life proving they're not good enough. So that's that repetitive negative, right? And you all have replaced it with, "Let's take that out, let's rescript, and now let's repetitively tell it the other side of this, which you are good enough." That's quite amazing.
Yeah, yeah, the conscious mind, it as soon as it gets confused or it hits that fight or flight or it comes to that beginning, it takes off and the unconscious comes forward and says, "I got this. I'm gonna decide, how we're gonna handle this." And if it's basing it off something that happened 20 years ago, no
Right.
amount of it's just it wants you to be safe, right? And this deals with the same with addictions. You can deal with the physical symptoms of people that are in addiction, whether it be alcohol or prescription or ADHD meds or anything like that. It you deal with the physical addiction, they go to a dry out center, a month later they come out, but that unconscious mind, it wants familiarity. Familiarity is safety, whether that is an
Good for you or
unsafe
not.
relationship
Right.
or whether that is a habitual, risky behavior or whatever it is. It wants that safety over physical well-being. So, you have to rewrite that script. You have to deal with things that are deep down, not just the physical aspects of it.
So, do you have messages that you would like for the listeners to hear that are thinking maybe they need help? Because, first of all, just even to think you need help is tough. And then, where do I go? What do I do? What would be a message to those people in their car listening to this podcast right now that you would give to them to help them, to assist them into helping themselves?
That's great. One of the biggest things that I speak to everyone openly, even out of the client and out of the clinic environment, is to just be curious with yourself. Curiosity is people so clearly in this world. It's whether it's fitness or whether it's eating, whether it's reading, meditation, yoga, anything. I guess yoga falls under fitness, but people, when they get a sense of discomfort or they get a sense of they're not sure what to do, they run to something. And I shouldn't say run, but they're like, well, oh, I'm in a funk. So I'm going to go do some fitness. I'm going to go for a run. Oh, I'm in a funk. I'm going to go meditate for a bit. Oh, I'm in a sit in that funk for a second. Sit
Yeah.
in it and say, why is this? Why do I feel, unregulated? Why do I feel off about something? Don't be so quick to put yourself in a positive state of mind. That's running away from what it is that is uncomfortability. You speak about it, your body's telling you something.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
get curious about what it is that is telling it and be honest with yourself. Nobody's listening. It's just you. It's uncomfortable, but to get curious is probably one of the biggest things that I always say. Like, why just explore with it and ask why.
So don't you think to get to that point of asking the question, of being curious, they gotta slow down, they gotta stop? Because in the world you came from, into the men out there that are slugging it out, whether it's manual labor or it's white collar work, it's tough to take that moment. And if you have that moment, it's like, what do I do? Like, do I go take a walk? Do I get away from my boss? I think, and now again, I'm focusing on the men. How do you do that for yourself? And then sit in the quietness of the curiosity and then trusting what you hear. Tell me about that moment. Tell like you're talking to somebody again that's driving along listening to this podcast.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to think of how I do that. I'm going to speak to, I've had all these amazing mentors in the construction world and in the management world when I was in that would just, I guess I followed their example. They would, if they come in and are regulated and they come into a crew of 20 men, 30 men, however many guys that you're talking to, people come in and they're regulated. They come in with intention is a big part when you're speaking and speaking positively and supporting individuals, and there was men and women on the webs or on the work site. And so it was just speaking generally to everyone and just empowering them to take the time, think about their tasks, think about the entire day in its entirety You know what? It's that's a tricky this is a tricky question. I'm gonna be honest because it is hard to think about. It's so easy for me to do now,
Yeah.
but to how I got to that point, you know?
Hasn't always been easy. And
It
I
hasn't
wonder.
always been easy, and speaking to the mentors again, they are I was always encouraged because I had good leadership and good mentorship in front of me. I was always encouraged to take the time and think about what you're doing. And in thinking about what you're doing, you know, a good mentor or a good leader encourages you to think about your intuitive side. It's not spoke about like that in the blue collar world. It's not about, you know, but it is about listen to your gut. You know, how many times have you had a guy come back to you and say something and you're like, I knew it. I knew that was going to happen. Or, you know, I knew I should have double checked on that, or I knew I should have. That so if you encourage people to listen to that, you know, it is intuitive, but it's all about your verbiage and how you speak about it. If you speak about that too much in the blue collar world, I mean, oh, with all your woo woo guys don't need a bunch of. I'm not going to
Yeah.
be out here hugging guys on the job site. It's not about feelings. It's about getting shit done. Blah blah blah. Pardon my language, but that is the verbiage that's used, and encouraging individuals to bring in a culture of listening to yourself and the way that you speak about it and saying, you know, you're a bunch of confident individuals. You're very competent and confident, and we are here to support you. And you know, I will have your back, and we will work through this all together if something arises. So I guess I always felt encouraged by individuals that you know we are all a team. When you build a great culture and you build a good team with good mentorship and good leadership, you encourage your people to be good leaders and to listen to that intuition, but it was never spoke about in that type of verbiage, I guess. So I'm trying to utilize that verbiage and you know and talk to people that you could be a good leader and you can be better for yourself if you listen to what's going on and stay in alignment and are your honest true self.
Okay. So I'm gonna get specific just for a second. What would you tell a guy who's very successful executive and, has managed 1,500 people, taken a company from 1,000,000 to $1,000,000,000, and and yet there's a subtleness. He's great when he speaks mostly to his people, but he can be taken as condescending. And this particular individual has been told all through his life, "It's not what you said. What you said was spot on. It's how you said it." And if you've been told this, because men get told this and it becomes like especially from women, no other man's gonna say that probably because they feel like they should take it. But a woman's gonna say, "You know what you said, but it's how you said it, and you have no filter." What would you say to a guy that's like, "Well, I'm successful, I'm fine," but it's starting to etch into his relationships, but he doesn't know it. And he does care. So I'm trying to get you to take this man, this individual, from knowing that something's up, but not willing to look into the past that made it, because what's in the past might be too scary. How do you make it safe for that person to even pursue a remedy?
Great question. I am going to preface something very, very strong in our field is that if I was to approach that individual, if they didn't want to change it, nothing can be said to that man
Yeah,
for
yeah,
him
yeah.
to want to. And I
Yep.
mean, I know you know that, but it is that individual would have to come forth to someone like myself or someone at the clinic and say, hey, I'm bumping up against this. I don't want to continue like this. How could you help me change this? You know, or what is it that, what is it that, that I'm wanting to not necessarily change, but work on? Or, I mean, I guess it is a change, but, you know, it comes right back down to that individual has to want to explore that. You know, I can share my story and hopefully that gets individuals curious about what's available to them and if they're bumping up against anything or if there is something that maybe they could explore more. But to approach someone and say, hey, I think you should change this, change that is it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but the thing that women do is they go to each other. And one thing I do notice, I love it when men have men's groups, and men need to be around men, and you need to talk about men stuff and talk about stuff that's uncomfortable with other men. I love that. How do men, or what would be your, I guess, advice to a guy who's out there struggling but can't, even hypnotherapy is too woo woo for him. What would you say to somebody like that that just needs to talk to somebody? How can you break through that barrier? Because again, I just see men with so many barriers, and you work with them. So,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a struggle, to get individuals to open up, and I guess I would say and speak to I used to, when you'd speak at a crew meeting in the morning, whether it be a safety meeting or whether it be just a task analysis, and you got everybody in a group, I used to always encourage everybody and be like, "Hey, I'm the individual responsible for this. I am the guy, delegating and doing things. If you don't feel confident coming up and talking to me because I don't know you very well, or you came over from somebody else's crew, or you're just I don't seem like the individual that is the type of person you want to open up to. Talk to someone." I used to always like to talk to somebody that does know me well that you work with in the same crew truck or in the same area. Talk to the lady at reception if you get along with her. Get a message that, hey, things aren't, I don't know what's up, but something's off. I don't feel comfortable in this situation. I don't feel comfortable in my situation because, as you said, well, people don't know how to address that and bring it up. I have spoke before, in meetings and management, saying that you don't necessarily have to verbalize something to deal with it. A good mentor and a person that is leading a crew should be able to notice and look around and see that maybe Johnny's a little bit off. Maybe he's looking right over top of his coffee cup at the gravel with that 1,000-yard stare, looking right past you. Maybe something's off. Sometimes, as a leader, you should know that. And it's not about going over and saying, "Hey, are you okay, man?" Because that just gets you one of these, and again, to speak what you're in that world that we're in, that you're speaking of. But that's not what it's about. I'm trying to break that away from guys, that's not what it's about. You go over to Johnny and be like, "You good?" How do you know that his spouse didn't just lose her job? How do you know that his mom just didn't take sick and here he is 1,000 miles away from her working up in the North or West Territories in a work camp and he's wondering about what's going on at home? It's to your benefit to keep in the know and to intuitively look around and know all these individuals and see what's going on. It's not about, again, asking, is everybody okay? Are you tired? Are you so on and so forth?
mhm,
But
right.
it is important. Somebody could, a worst case scenario, lose a finger. Somebody's not paying attention and they're
Yeah.
not doing their task properly. So this is not only about taking care of your people and supporting people, but it's about being a good leader, and that I need to have a safe environment up here. I need to have a productive, flowing workflow environment. So to encourage people to look out for those individuals that maybe aren't going to look out for themselves, and to be able to notice that, this guy's been off a little couple days, and if you don't know that guy good enough and you think that he's going to give you one of these, if you go over and talk, "Yeah, I'm fine, leave me alone," maybe talk to one of the guys that's working with him you notice that he's talking to all the time and be like, "Hey, man, Johnny, all right? Like, are we good? Can I, shift him off on a different crew? Should we maybe change his task away from something it's not so critical? How can we help everybody here be more comfortable, more safe, more productive, so on and so forth?" So I think, I probably instill more, not, it's hard to tell guys, because you can tell everybody a million times, speak up. We're here to help. We're here to support.
Right.
I push more on to as leaders, we should be noticing what's going on with our people. You should be noticing what's going on to the guy to the left, the right, and everywhere else in between. And you, as a strong, confident person, should be addressing it.
Yeah.
Not only, shouldn't be getting in there and being bothering and asking the person for their personal story, but you say, "Are you good, man?" Because if you're not good, we can shuffle you around here. We can try to work shorthanded for a couple days. If you got stuff to deal with, you don't need to tell me, but we're here. We're a team. We're all here to support, and that holds a lot of weight when you tell somebody you don't have to talk about it, but we can help you out with whatever it is. And, that when that person feels supported, 99% of the time, floodgates are going to open. It's going to be, man, and it's going to come out. And that alone is going to help that guy drop his shoulders and realize that, we're all in this together and we can all help out. It doesn't have to be all talky and feely, but it is a support system and we're all on the same team.
Wow, I hope you're out there talking to the leaders of the world because that's to have a great mentor has really I can see where it's really helped you, and you are a great mentor. So, Leighton, what's next for you? What's the future?
I'm so excited about all the stuff that we're that I'm doing. I love the hypnotherapy. I like, like these types of conversations when people are wondering what's the next step. I don't have the next step, but I do have a good story, and I do have the power of enthusiasm to get people excited about being curious and doing things for themselves. You know, something that I've really been interested lately is wanting to talk to individuals, to mentors. There's lots of people that want to hold mentorship camps and hold this and hold that. And I am very interested in, as I spoke earlier, about Thomas Campbell, about, David Hawkins and Rupert Sheldrake, and this whole idea of us being able to create in a morphic field. Again, this is getting in a little bit in the woo woo, but to speak to it's not to me to speak to leaders and to speak to individuals and say, just like we were just talking, to be able to read your group, to be able to think about, energy as far as if you're in a boardroom, to start bridging these types of topics with leaders, with individuals. When you're in a boardroom and there's 10 guys in there and everybody's talking and everybody's having an experience, and one person says something and then you see everybody just go, ooh, and the energy changes and they're like, I can't believe that guy just said that, and everybody can feel that. So why is it so foreign to think that maybe our energy can be reflective, and if we're in tune to that, how come we can't notice that? Getting a leader to be in tune to that and say, hey, did you know, things shifted. Oh yeah, but he shouldn't have said that. Yeah, but how do you know he shouldn't have said that? It wasn't because somebody said you shouldn't have said that. It's because everybody read the room and was just like, we're going that route in this meeting.
Yeah.
you know so that can be utilized in a group of 5 guys, in a group of 30 guys. And if you bring everybody and have a strong, solid, intentional conversation in the morning, again, whether it's a safety meeting or a task analysis in a boardroom, out in the field, wherever it is, you bring these things up, pay attention to your people, see how people react, get people engaged. When you come in and talk, your verbiage is very important. If you come in and be like, corporate wants us to do this, the client's all messed up, this is dumb, that's dumb, you're setting your people up for failure. They're going to walk out and just be annoyed, and they just want the end of the day to come. It's not about coming in and saying, oh, everything is rosy and everything is great. It's coming in and saying, hey, here's what we have to tackle today.
Mhm.
There is no cavalry. We are the cavalry. We
Yeah.
are the people that they called to do this task, and we need to do this. We don't get to go home until this is done, or we need to reach this certain main point today, this benchmark or whatever. And we've done this before. We've done it. So we're going to do it here. So here's how we're going to do it. Here's my plan. If everybody feels good, and look around, you want your people to be elevated. Do you want to use intentional wording and to help people realize that it's not even just wording. It, just like you said, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. If you're coming in and you're bringing in that energy and you're bringing in positivity and you're a grounded, solid leader, and you're coming in and being like, guys, we got this. We've done this before. And then if you want to think about our brains as a receiver, receiving information and receiving energy, and our body, our nervous system is going to receive energy. If you can bring that in and get everybody tuned into that same frequency, everybody on the same page, everybody where they were when they left yesterday, when, we crushed it yesterday. So you want to try to bring that all back, get everybody on the same page. And I think there's more to it than just making a checklist to be like, yep, I said that. Yep, I said this. Yes, I gave everybody clear, concise information about what their tasks are and what their job is. But it's more than a checklist. It's about filling the group, getting everybody back to where they were, making sure everybody's supported, and reading those guys. And if you see that individual that's still at the end of that wasn't paying attention, not giving them a, hey, Johnny, pay attention. It's has he been like that for a couple days? Is there a reason? Again, if you have to pull him aside at the end or ask the guy that's riding with him at the end of the day, everything good? Are we good here? I think that, creating a culture is so important over the checklist, over the procedural. I think it's everything to have a nice cohesive group and be able to read that group and be able to teach people to read that group, whether, it's the foreman below you and in the entire circle, that, we're all in the same team here. Everything is lateral. Yes, there's a hierarchy, when it comes to a flow chart. And yes, this person is above that person, but only on lines in little red boxes on paper.
Mm.
We're all here. We're all on the same team. Feedback should go either way. And really helping people create teams and create that culture and trying to instill a little bit more of the intuitive side of it. And, using some of these like you speak of co-regulation, my nervous system is going to affect the guy beside me. So if I walk in and I'm rattled and this guy gets rattled and that guy gets rattled, that's infectious. So
Right.
it's also infectious the other way when you come in with confidence and you come in with leadership. So teaching that and trying to figure out how to get some of these nuance, this terminology, and to teach people to read into that intuitive side of things is I think going to be greatly helpful in in leadership, whether it's construction or any type of management style.
Wow. Well, Leighton, you've been incredibly informative, and thank you so much for the weave that you've done in your own life from this world of manly management to this world of management with intuition and culture and openness, and for yourself and for others, and creating a better culture in your workplace, which in the ripple effect may also create a better culture outside your workplace and hopefully ripple all across the world.
Yeah, that when people are productive and in harmony and in that in alignment with themselves, if you go home at the end of the day and you had a great day at work and it didn't seem like work, if you just showed up, did stuff all day, and in a bunch of people that are aligned with you and on the same page, and then you go home, you're a lot more likely to grab your kid and go in the backyard and play ball than if you're frustrated and oh, that guy, he's an idiot. I can't believe he just telling me what to do all day rather than asking my opinion. I'm the guy that does this. Why wouldn't he ask my opinion? And they go home, they might just want some silence and, get the kids out of the room and turn the TV on and numb out for a bit. And those people, they're going to show up excited. And, and it's not about the productivity, but if it's not really work, if it's just people showing up and doing stuff all day, you have a better society, you have a better block in your community, you have everything. If you just, you work on yourself and you work on that and you work on your household, if everybody did that cohesively, we'd have nothing to worry about, right?
Yes. Wouldn't that be lovely?
Wouldn't
Thank
it
you.
be? I have a dream.
Well, that is your dream. That's the future for you. So thank you so much for being on the show today and spending your time with us and imparting all this amazing wisdom through all this incredible experience. We appreciate you so much, Leighton. And if somebody wanted to call you or look you up, is there a way to contact you if somebody's out there curious about maybe helping themselves?
Yeah, lifecraft.me is the website that will get you to the link tree for the clinic. I'm on there. Everything that I offer is on there. We do work over Zoom. We do consults over Zoom. I know we're up in Canada, but regardless of who hears this, yeah, there's a Zoom link on there. There's a free discovery if somebody just wants to talk, and if we just end up chopping it up and I can get that person curious about themselves, give them some reading material. They want to ask about my story about, well, what were you reading? What were you talking about? That's all cool too. It's
Yeah.
always great to speak to like-minded individuals.
Right, and so glad you're out there to help everybody, and especially the guys in our lives. So thank you so much. Thanks to Leighton for imparting his wisdom from being a construction worker to hypnotherapist and how the workforce could really use more intuition, both internally and externally, creating a great culture. Thanks to him and thanks to you, my listeners. This is Angel Howard, and you're listening to The Upshift. Come on over to my website, angelhoward.co, and see all the things that you can do. Retreats, you can buy my book on Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble called Issues in Your Tissues, or hire me to speak at your next engagement. I make it a lot of fun, and yes, there might be a little bit of movement and laughter. So hoping you have a great day. Until next time.